You're listening to the Primal Happiness Show, a podcast dedicated to helping you thrive in this crazy modern world. Every Tuesday, we explore the nature of how our minds really work, what exactly the human animal requires to thrive, and how we can live happier and more fulfilling lives. If you're new here and haven't yet taken our free class, then there's no better place to get a jump start on reclaiming your primal happiness. It's where we'll guide you step by step through our antidote to today's modern world. Simply head on over to primalhappiness.co/antidote to get the free class and discover how to thrive without having to move to a planet that's not so crazy as ours. But now, your host, Lian Brook-Tyler.
Hello, my beautiful people. A huge warm welcome back to the show and to February. In today's crazy modern world, men and women are living shallow, disconnected, and unfulfilling lives. So we created the path for those who are ready to reclaim their primal power and actualize their deepest gifts. And I am delighted to let you know that we've now opened enrollment for the next Waking the Wild Feminine and Waking the Wild Masculine. If you don't already know about them, then what can I say? They are potent circles to support you in discovering your soul path and expressing your heart's truth, whilst being fully seen and held by a circle of your fellow men and women. Specifically, as a woman joining Waking the Wild Feminine, you'll fall in love with your body and harness its wisdom. Reclaim your radiance and emanate magnetic energy. Expand and embody your capacity for pleasure. Find and use your voice to express your deepest desires. And as a man joining Waking the Wild Masculine, you'll create unshakable clarity on your purpose and mission. Lead your life, love, and intimacy from deeply grounded confidence. Be fully seen and supported by your fellow wild men and become a sovereign man of power, integrity, and freedom. It really is the most powerful activating magic we know of. You can let us know that you're feeling the call by going along to either primalhappiness.co/WTWF for Waking the Wild Feminine or primalhappiness.co/WTWM for Waking the Wild Masculine. Or if it's easier, if you go along to our Go Deeper page, primalhappiness.co/Go Deeper, you'll see the links for both of those there too. If either of them are calling to you, then we really look forward to seeing you in circle soon. And now for this week's show. This episode is our monthly show called All the Everything, and it's where I jam on an eclectic mix of topics. It also airs live on Facebook on the first Friday of every month at 10 a.m. GMT. And this is where you can get up close and personal with me, get inside my head and hear what I'm up to and thinking about. In this episode, I shared what I've been up to in the past month, what I've been consuming and creating. And then I dive deep into the topic, how to discover and harness the power of desire. This turned out to be an even juicier and deeper topic than even I was expecting. I suspect it will be for you too. Let's jump in. Welcome to All the Everything. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And I have got, I'm sure I say this every month actually, and I'm sure I say that every month too, but this feels like one of my favorite topics. So we're going to be getting into all things desire in a moment. And then before that, I'm going to, as usual, just talk about what I've been up to in the last month. And I typically do that through the lens of what I've been consuming and what I've been creating. And I'm going to do that again today. I was just sharing before I started recording that January has just felt like a whirlwind. And I get the impression from what I've seen other people say that it's not been just me. Like, it really feels like it's been this just like wild ride through January, not in a bad way, just to be clear. I mean, it's had all kinds of things. But it's felt like a really big month with a lot of stuff shifting and moving and being created. And so I paused to think, what shall I choose? And there were so many things. So I'm going to start with what I've been consuming because it felt the simplest. And then I'll share a bit of what I've been creating. And again, there's been so much that I'm not going to be able to share everything. Otherwise, that'll be the whole show. So let's start with what I've been consuming. And if you're a regular listener to the show, you'll know that typically that's a book. It's not because that's the only way I consume. I do watch the odd, series on Netflix, or go to see a film, or go to see a show, or all the other ways we consume. But I'm also a just avid reader, and books are my favourite thing. So typically it's a book. And this month, and I haven't finished it yet, so I'm sharing something that's actually still kind of alive for me at the moment, which is a book called The Magician's Way. And if you know me, you'll know that I love all things magic. And as soon I saw a amazing woman called Katrina Ruth, who I follow, and she shared that this book had this profound effect on her life. And it's something she reads twice a year. And when she described it, I was thinking, I can't believe I've never heard of this book before. It seems so up my street, so in alignment with the things that I love and talk about a lot, and the same for other people I know. So I was just like, if you've heard of it or read it, let me know, because I feel like, am I the only person that's never heard of this book? It's by, have I got it up? I may have it up on my thingy now. Let me just see who it's by, because I can't actually remember. I'm usually better at remembering authors' names than I appear to be in this moment. It's William Whitecloud. Ooh, a name. So yeah, I'd love to know, am I the only person that's never heard of this book, which has got 5 stars on Amazon, 105 reviews in the UK. So clearly other people have heard of it and read it, but obviously not anyone that I know of until now. Anyway, it's similar from what I've read so far. It reminds me of other books that I love, like Illusions, which I must have recommended on this show before. The Way of the Peaceful Warrior, Siddhartha. There's quite a few of those kind of books where they're talking about something you could call magical or spiritual, but they're done through a fictional story, sometimes which have its, no, that's not. I was about to say another one, but actually it's meant to be true, so I won't say that one. But it may include characters who are either real or kind of rumoured to be real. But the idea is the story itself is fictional. And I love books like that. They, for me, contain that magic of myth and story where you, I think, enter a different space when you're reading stories of that kind. There's something that I think it does to the psyche where it allows you to be more open to seeing things, hearing things differently. And that's what I think. There's something really, really powerful about that transmission, that way of transmitting. And I love nonfiction books too, just to say. I devour those by the tenfold. But I do think there is something really special about that kind of book where it's talking about things that are very deep, hard to talk about literally, and they've managed to embed it into a story. So far, I'm loving it. I'll update you when I get to the end of the book if I'm still feeling that way. But again, judging by the reviews on Amazon, I'm guessing I will. But yeah, go check it out if you like that kind of book too. Okay, what have I been creating? Wow, what haven't I been creating? So the first thing that comes to mind is I agreed to write a monthly column for my local newspaper. And I may have mentioned this before because it's been rumbling around for the last few months, kind of waiting for the big, like, da-da-da-da, here's the start of the column. Because I actually wrote the first article, I think in the autumn, and it's just been kind of waiting for the editor wanted to kind of do a big, like, this is the new column in January. And it was really interesting to me how much that drove up in me, how much fear, how much resistance. It really wasn't this kind of like easy undertaking that I first thought it was. Because I write so much anyway, because I share so much of my life and my thoughts, you know, whether it be on Facebook, on the podcast, in Circle, I had no idea how challenging that would be for me. And as I'm going to talk about in a bit around desire, I think that's a really good indication when we start to feel that sense of like, oh, I'm feeling really called towards something and it's driving up all this fear. That typically means it's for us. And this definitely had that feeling. And it's hard to be absolutely clear why it drove up the amount of resistance and fear it did. I think it was partly about there's been a kind of separation, I think, between the kind of work me and the like day-to-day life me. And so for me, that was like really bringing those two worlds together where I'm so used to in a kind of, I'm saying work in inverted commas, like it's not really work, but, you know, any time where I'm like in this kind of expression, really sharing of myself, my philosophy, my work. And there it's feeling increasingly safe to just like be me, be all of me. When I'm in my hometown, in that kind of day-to-day environment of being a mum, dropping my children off at school, I don't know, going out into local restaurants, having dinner, that's just not been something that I felt, it hasn't felt like the environment to like kind of bring all of myself. And I don't think I quite realised how much of a divide there was until I was, even before it actually went out, even just the thought of my first column going out into my local town, I was like, oh my goodness, this means quite a lot to me, actually. This feels like a big deal. So the next kind of column will be out this month. And it already, and this is often the way, and I must have spoken about this tons of times before, when we do choose into that kind of expansion, you know, moving through the resistance we've got towards that thing we're being called towards, we often find the next time we don't have quite the same level of fear and resistance. And it's definitely been true for me. There's not to say it's like completely gone, but compared to how I was feeling before the first one came out, it feels much, much easier on my system. So that's been one of the things I've been creating. The other thing, kind of main thing, again, there's been lots, but the other main thing has been Waking the Wild Feminine. And that's been twofold. One, completing on the last circle, which was just gorgeous, really, really gorgeous. Such a diverse mixture of women, all at different stages of their journey, all at different, how can I say this? Let me say it this way. I noticed that even though we're all in that kind of same body of work, the same path of reclaiming the wild feminine, how that's actually embodied and expressed is so different. It really surprises me how one woman will really feel called to take that into a direction of, let's say, I don't know, reclaiming her sexuality. For another woman, it could be so much about her creativity, her creative expression. For another woman, it could be really very much around her body. One example is a woman deciding to regrow her body hair and see how that feels for her. So it's really different. And just to be clear, it's a very kind of like self-inquiry, self-led journey. Although I'm providing that kind of wider context, container, invitations, inspiration, teaching, coaching, holding the circle, the actual path a woman takes is very much of her own choosing. So I would rarely say, go do this. So these journeys they take are very much what they're feeling called towards. And so that always delights me. And I think I hadn't quite realized when I first started doing this work how individual those journeys would be. So that's always something that just like I find so inspiring. I get inspired by the women in that circle and what they're up to. And then I might decide, oh, that's actually feeling really juicy to me too. So that was such a beautiful experience. And also quite heartbreaking. I can feel actually the emotion in my voice now. It's, I've never typically been good at goodbyes and endings and completions. And in the past, my way of dealing with that had been to kind of disassociate or absence myself, almost to kind of like preempt the ending. I would create the ending or the withdrawal. And my work has been to be really kind of choosing into and empowering that completion of whatever it might be. And so for this, really choosing into like being like fully in the heartbreak and the joy of closing that Waking the Wild Feminine was what I was really present to. And just knowing that kind of that last circle was the last circle I'd be sitting in with those women in that way. I mean, who knows? We may get to sit in circle again somehow, some way in future. But that was definitely that's definitely one of the ways that I disassociate. It's like I say to myself, "Oh, it's not really the ending because we can do this, or it doesn't have to be the end. We could always meet again or extend it." And that's definitely been my way in the past. So there's real growth for me to be able to be really present to like it is the ending of this. Anything else that gets created is after this ending, after this completion. Then, of course, the other creation, which segues really nicely from there, is the creation of the next Wake the Wild Feminine, which is coming in March. March the 9th is the start of that one. And already just feeling so... Again, it's that really interesting blend of fear and excitement where it's for me to do something that is similar or the same to something I've done before is one of the things that I find really challenging. So to choose into creating another one so quickly brought up a lot of resistance for me. And then I could also really see what was there for me to really choose into that and empower that in a way that I haven't previously. And to also choose into ways that will stretch me. So I know that overall container, that way, that structure, the work I take those women through is really powerful, works beautifully. And how can I choose into creating a new within that? Of course, the way the circles are held are very of the moment. They're very kind of like a co-creation. The women will share from their heart whatever's there for them in the moment, and then I will coach, reflect, acknowledge them for whatever's coming up in the moment. So that part of it's always very fresh and new. But there's other parts which are kind of like part of the structure, and it's those places that I'm going to be looking at kind of, what would be edgy for me to try? And as ever, when we do that, we don't know how it's going to work. We don't know if it's going to be successful. And if we're interested in that path of expansion, we choose anyway. So that, even though it's not started, the thoughts around that, and Jonathan and I looking at kind of what we both took from he'd led Wake the Wild Masculine at the same time as I was doing Wake the Wild Feminine, and there also will be a Wake the Wild Masculine starting at the same time as the next Wake the Wild Feminine. And so we've been very, as we always do, very collaborative and looking at those kind of shared learnings, what went well, what didn't, what could be, what worked really well in that setting that could be brought into this setting. So that's all the conversations we've been in. So just like, definitely, I mean, I tend to do this wherever I'm in at the moment. I say, this is my favorite. And then I'm over here like, this is my favorite. But all I can say is leading these circles is definitely one of my favorite things to do. It really is something that just comes straight from my soul. It's work that I think I put off for some time because it's so important to me. And it feels really important to kind of get right. And of course, we can't ever get these things right. So if we're waiting for that, it will never happen. So if I'll give an invitation again at the end of this this episode, but if you're feeling the call towards Waking Wild Feminine or Waking Wild Masculine, go and have a look at the details, which I'll give at the end of the call, and see if it's right for you. As I often say, it's not something that is for every person at every moment. It very much is something that you need to kind of feel into, whether it's for you now. I don't know. You'll know. Okay, let me take a breather because I know this topic around desire is it's going to have its way with me. So I just need to take a moment and center myself and see where to start. Okay, I will start with why I'm even talking about this topic, and it's twofold. One, this is something that I spend a lot of time with my one-to-one clients and women in Waking Wild Feminine exploring, talking about, and choosing into. And then I asked the people in our Primal Happiness Facebook group what they would like to hear me talk about on the next All the Everything. And I gave, I think, 4 topic suggestions, and one of them was the power of desire. And it was one of the ones, there was actually one that beat it in terms of number of votes, but hey, I like to kind of go with what I'm feeling guided to too. So I probably will do the other topic, which was heart-centered leadership, on a different episode, but I was really feeling called to talk to this one today. So that's why I'm talking about it. And what I'm really present to is how this idea of desire gets such a bad rap. You really don't have to look very hard to see just so many quotes and readings and philosophy that's kind of all saying desire is a bad thing. Like, let's get rid of desire. It doesn't have its place in a kind of conscious society, conscious person even. And this is an example. When I was having a little look around earlier, there's a quote from Socrates where he's talking about individual desires must be postponed in the name of the higher ideal. And I would say one of my kind of more general living inquiries is, and this could be worded in different ways, but given we're talking about desire at the moment, it's what if us empowering that individual desire, that deeper, wild soul desire, is what creates a higher ideal, is what creates a world that works for everyone, is what creates this kind of gorgeous, beautiful, co-creational world. What if that is actually the way? And that's not me saying I know that's true. That is definitely one of those kind of questions I live into. And I'll also give a bit of a disclaimer before we start. If your path is one of really focusing on ascension, enlightenment, that kind of spiritual path, this may not be a useful topic for you. This might actually this might get in the way of that path. As I sometimes talk about, I see that there's kind of 3 paths we can take, and they're not that you can take all 3, but it likely is if you're very much on that particular path of awakening to spirit, oneness, whatever word you want to give to it, apart from your kind of, I guess, empowering the underlying desire for awakening, I'm not sure the other kind of desires I'm talking about right now are going to help. I very much see that the other 2 paths, and I'm not going to go in depth onto these at the moment, but I sometimes talk about them as growing up. So that's the maturation of ego, us becoming more skilled in relationship, for example. And the other path, which is rooting down into our soul. Both of those, and particularly the soul one, is really helpful if we learn that language of desire and how to empower it. And so if you're interested in either of those two paths, keep listening. If you are just kind of hell-bent on, no, my path is awakening from the prison of my ego, the prison of feeling like I've kind of got a self, this isn't the show for you. So let's catch up again next week. If you're still here, I'm guessing you're interested in how desire can be used in service of your expansion. So again, I want to just spend a bit more time defining what I mean when I'm talking about desire. There's that kind of sense of desire being wrong when we're talking about how it can get in the way of a spiritual path, but there's also that kind of mainstream or domesticated or tame way of seeing desire, which is typically when we're very driven by habits, addictions, that sense of kind of what's going to keep us culturally safe. So that is when typically, because honestly, most of us have spent a good portion of our lives in that kind of domesticated way of being. When we think of desires for, I don't know, junk food, junk TV, having a bigger house because it will help us look good and therefore be more accepted. So I'm sure you probably know this already. That's not the desires I'm talking about either. What I'm talking about here is, and also, so just to say one more thing, there's also going to be those kind of like primal desires, what I would just call that kind of, that drive to have our needs met, that drive to have, you know, have food, have water, have air, have safety. I'm not talking about those either. I really hope those needs are already met. And if not, that's definitely, I would say that's the place to start. But it's not what this episode's about. Okay, let me just take a breather. So despite what Socrates said earlier about individual desires must be postponed, he also said, and Aristotle agreed with him, that reason and desire work together to determine what is a good object of desire. So if we use that kind of like, that tool of reason to discern, is this a good desire? Then we might be on track. Then it might be useful. But I don't think that word reason is the right measure. I noticed this come up over and over again in my conversations. I'm going to say a lot of time I'll be saying women, just because that's mostly my clients are women. I'd say pretty much everything I'm going to be talking about also like applies to anyone. It's just because my work is so much with women, I'm going to often say when I speak to women or women say to me. So I just want to put that out there first. So in my work with women, that word reason, reasonable, unreasonable comes up over and over again. As soon as we start to look at desires, I can literally kind of like, wait for it. She's going to say something like, and it will usually be something like, but what if they're reasonable? What if they're unreasonable? How do I know if they're unreasonable? How do I know if they're reasonable? There'll always be something along those lines. And how would you know? How would you know? What is the measure? How are you going to know? Like, if reasonable is one end and unreasonable is the other, what metric are you going to use to decide? And what if that isn't actually even the ways to discern what is the desire to follow? And again, I wouldn't say that anything I'm saying here is you should take this as an instruction. All of what I'm saying here is, I would say, an invitation to inquire yourself. But what I see over and over again is our juiciest, our most soulful, our most wild, our most freeing desires aren't reasonable. They're not reasonable. They're not meant to be reasonable. So I just want to put that out there first. Like, if we're looking at that kind of, I can say stay safe by always running my desires through the filter of whether it's reasonable. I don't think so. And I'm going to read a quote here from Clarissa Pinkola Estes, whose work I absolutely absolutely love. She's the author of The Wild Woman's Way. And pretty much anything she says on any topic, I'm likely to agree with. So I'll say that first. But I'm just going to share this that she says specifically on what you want, i.e. desires. The way to maintain one's connection to the wild is to ask yourself what it is that you want. This is the sorting of the seed from the dirt. One of the most important discriminations we can make in this matter is the difference between things that beckon to us and things that call from our souls. Did you hear the word reason in there? No, I didn't either. And those last few words, things that call from our souls. So that's what I'm talking about here. When I'm talking about desire, I'm talking about what I might call wild desire or soul desire. Let me just shut down. I've just realised I can't really. Sorry, I just had a Facebook alert come through, but I don't think I can shut it down without ending this live. I don't know. So looking at it through that lens, are you aware of what you desire? And that might sound like a bit of a trick question, like, well, of course I know what I desire. I'd say if you are, you'd be in the minority. Again, from the work that I do with my women clients, most don't. And it's completely understandable. Most of us have lived a life where we've been trained to numb and shame so much of ourselves. We just have lost that connection to anything that's really going to show us what we desire at that kind of, again, deep, deep level. So first and foremost, when I'm asking you that question, are you aware of what you desire? Are you aware of what you really deeply want, what your soul desires? If you're like, no, actually, I can't think of anything. Have some compassion for yourself. It's no wonder. That's what I find happens over and over. And that's why when I'm taking women through that work of Wake 'em Wild Feminine, we actually leave that kind of making contact with our desires until quite late on, because first it's that creating that safety, that embodiment, that practice of inquiry and self-awareness that really has to go first for us even to be able to discern what our friend Clarissa was talking about between those things that beckon to us and the things that call from our souls. So this is not something I think we can just like dip into. I will give some practices that you can take away and start to get a sense of it. But first and foremost, I'd say this isn't something that we can rush into or should rush into. There's a lot that goes into this, a lot of work that goes into being able to first make contact with our desires, and then certainly to be able to empower that, to embody that in the world. So, and I'd also say when we start that work, when we start to see how those dreams that we held dear have been like starved of life, we've not lived them into the world, to see all the ways we've sabotaged ourselves, all the ways we've created deadness, all the ways that our external life don't match our internal desires. When we start to see that, that's really painful. It's really sad to look at ourselves and say, this is how I've lived, that I've not listened to what my soul wants for me, why I came here even. That's really painful. So again, when I offer any inquiries, I'd always say be as compassionate and loving with yourself as you can be, because there's a lot of stuff here that you've not looked at for good reason. Doesn't mean you shouldn't be looking there, but just to hold it in that feeling of acceptance and compassion really helps. It really helps you sort of stay in the inquiry, stay on that path. Okay, what next? So I'm just going to take a look at my notes because I was thinking of so many different things I wanted to share here and I wanted to try and keep it in some kind of logical order so I didn't just like overwhelm you. So I think let's have a look now. Let's assume you've been on this journey of starting to make contact with your desires. What will happen next is you'll get clear that, If I say yes to my desires, this might happen. If I say no to desires, this might happen. And so let's look at it like quite logically for the moment, like almost like a flow chart where we've got kind of the desire here and then a kind of no leg and a yes leg. I don't know if leg is the technical term. any flow chart buffs out there, let me know if there's a better word than leg, maybe flow. So by saying no to that desire, that's going to look quite appealing. That's why consciously or subconsciously, you've said no to a whole bunch of them already, like we all do. And so by saying no, you stay safe. You likely stay socially acceptable. You're going to be still embraced by your community. There's likely to be no cost, and that could be no cost financially, but no cost of any other kind. And then there's also going to be the case that everything's going to stay the same, which is kind of, you could look at that like that's good or that's bad. It depends how you're looking at it. But there's going to be a kind of plateau of your life where you are, your being, or even an erosion. We sometimes like to see life that if we don't change, it will stay the same. Because everything else is expanding, that's actually not likely to be the case. By us staying still is likely to actually mean a erosion, a kind of pulling back of our being. So by us saying no, we stay safe, the world stays the same, and potentially actually regresses. And so most of us, much of the time, will choose that because safety looks good. On the other, I'm going to call it a leg. Let's just embrace leg. The other leg, the yes leg of saying yes to our desire, that's risky. That's going to drive up usually a whole bunch of fear. It's not going to be a guarantee that we're going to get what we want or that it's going to be safe to do so. It's probably going to come with a cost. And that could be a financial cost, and it's likely to be another cost too. That could be people thinking differently of us. And it's also going to create expansion. It takes for us from where we are now into another way of being, another way of doing, all sorts of things. Like it's really hard to predict. It's like from that point of creation, that point of expansion, all manner of things come from there. So it literally allows things to be created in the world, not just your desire, but all the ripple effects of you empowering your desire. So I'm just making it clear, this stuff looks like, it should be quite easy. Once I've decided I'm going to be someone who lives a desire-led life and I'm going to say yes to my desires, that's forgetting you will be in that flow chart, metaphorically, of being very aware of those two legs. But I suspect because you're human, you'll be uber aware, uber attuned to the no leg in particular. You'll be really thinking, oh yeah, by saying no, I'm going to stay safe. I'm going to avoid all those problems, all those dangers, all those things where people are going to think, who does she think she is, or she's no longer one of us. So really, really important conversation to have, because this is something that will be there in the background, ready to leap all over every time you're ready to empower a desire or even consider empowering a desire. In fact, I don't have the quote here, but our friend Clarissa describes it as either the predator or the animal groom. So it's that part of our psyche that will come in and stop us empower our desires. It will kill off our desires. It will deaden them, squeeze them, stop us taking action on them. So something really worth being aware of. Right. Okay. Let me take another breather. And I'll just mention this actually before I go into, I'm going to give a couple of exercises that will be ways to start to get clear on your desires. And again, I say this with the idea of this wider context of creating that sort of safety in your nervous system, really deep sense of connection in your body, being able to feel it's safe to recognize your desires and actually learn to listen to them. Their voices often aren't very loud because they're not used to being listened to. So everything I'm saying here is with the idea that work needs to be done alongside the inquiries I'm about to give you. But just first of all, I want to say one more thing on what I was just talking about. And I think I mentioned this in last month's All the Everything, I think. And it's seeing it through. I think this is so helpful, the lens of the archetype of the lover and its shadow, the prostitute. And when we're in our lover, we have such a sense of our worth, our value, our values. And we are prepared to bear that cost. We're prepared to say yes to our desires because they mean more than anything. They're worth more than anything. When we're in our shadow, in that prostitute, that's where we are going to say no, because we're going to be looking at the cost. We're going to be thinking, if I can't actually think of an example. I'm going to say something really random here. If I go out wearing red boots, because I have this like soulful desire to go out wearing red boots, that's going to cost me. People are going to look at me and think I'm a loon or, attention seeker. Therefore, that cost is too much for me to bear. Instead, I'm going to just not empower my desire. I'm going to put aside my values. So that can be a really helpful lens through which to kind of stay alert to those times where we're in that prostitute energy of making deals and looking at the cost versus in our lover where we're like, what I'm valuing is all. That's what matters. That's what really, really counts to me. So, right, let's get into some of the ways that you can inquire as to what your desires are. So, the first one, and this usually makes the women I work with laugh because whilst when I say, what do you desire? They say, I don't know. I don't need anything. I can't think of anything. As soon as I say, what's your biggest complaints? They usually laugh because they know their complaints really well. So start there. Start with, what are your greatest complaints? And I don't mean those kind of like surface level niggles. I mean those kind of like deep, deep feelings of, I don't have my needs met. I don't feel like, and I don't mean those kind of surface needs. I mean those kind of, or primal needs, or those kind of just basic human needs. I mean like a deeper sense of complaint and disappointment. Start there. What are those for you? And then, and I'm offering this as a context. I'm not saying it's like 100% true all the time, but as an inquiry, what if there were deep desires underlying those complaints? What are those deep desires underlying your complaints? So that can be a really good way to kind of like a secret passage almost into the psyche, into the subconscious. If you are willing to open the door of the complaint, you are likely to get then a secret door into the underlying desire. So that can be a really wonderful way. There's more, there's deeper places to take that inquiry, but I'd say just start there. It can just be really worthwhile just getting present to what those desires are before you even think about empowering them. Again, so much of this work is being willing to just look at what's there before you even decide whether you're going to do anything with it. Just being willing to see there's a desire there and to like hold it, give it some space, hold it in your heart, allow it to have some airtime, even if you don't decide to empower it. Even that is so powerful. So to put some lip gloss on. I like to have glossy lips at all times. Right. So, and then the next one I'm going to offer you is, if you knew you were totally safe and taken care of, and it's required that you have desires and that you empower them, what would your life look like? How would you live, move, dress, work? What would no longer be acceptable to you? And what would you be saying or not saying? And again, this is in that context of it's all okay. No matter what those desires are, no matter if you empower them, you will be okay. You'll be totally safe and taken care of. What would your life then look like? How would you be showing up? What would you be saying yes and no to? So that's another inquiry. And again, I can't say this strongly enough. All of this is so much more possible and powerful when we can do it in that wider context of being willing to do the work of getting to have a soulful life where we're allowed to have desire, have wildness, be held by other people who are on that path too. That makes this so much more enjoyable and so much easier. Okay, I'm going to leave you with a quote from our friend Clarissa. And again, because her work, like mine, is mainly with women, the quote talks directly to women, but I suspect much this is true for men too. The comprehension of this wild woman nature is not a religion, but a practice. It is it is a psychology in its truest sense, a knowing of the soul. Without her, women are without ears to hear soul talk or to register the chiming of their own inner rhythms. Without her, they forget why they're here. They hold on when they would best hold out. Without her, they are silent when they are in fact on fire. She is their regulator. She is their soulful heart, the same as the human heart regulates the physical body. Oh. Love that one. So that is me done for now, if I'm ever done, on the topic of desire. So if you've got any questions, again, that's a topic that I love talking about. I think there's so much there. So if there's anything you would like me to talk about in future episodes, if you've got any questions, let me know. Really, really happy to take them. And so what next? If you are listening to this on the live rather than the podcast, make sure you go check out our podcast. We have weekly episodes on all manner of wild goodness, and that's at primalhappiness.co/podcast. If you're interested in either of the upcoming circles, so we've got Waking the Wild Feminine and Waking the Wild Masculine, where we'll be diving into topics of this kind for sure. They're both starting on March the 9th, and there's a limited number of spaces, which is intentional. That's so that we keep them really intimate, really powerful. So if you're feeling like they might be for you, go check them out. Don't delay. And the best link for that for you to go to is probably primalhappiness.co/go deeper. And once you're on that page, you'll see links off to either of those circles. So really hope to see you in one of those circles soon. Is there anything else? Oh yeah, go join our group if you're not already in there. And that's at primalhappiness.co/ no, it's not. It's facebook.com/group/ Start again. It's facebook.com/groups/primalhappiness, which is a really lovely way to meet other people on this wild path. We end up in conversations about all sorts of things. That could be unschooling, home ed. It could be body-led movement and dance. It could be just going out into the wild, all kinds of things. So if that sounds like your kind of vibe, you'll be very welcome and you'll really enjoy being there amongst kindred souls. That is me done for this month. Thank you so much for joining, whether you're joining live, watching the replay, or listening on the podcast. Really, really appreciate you and your presence. Have a wonderful rest of the day and a gorgeous weekend. Mwah. Lots of love. So that's us done for this month. Are you feeling inspired to choosing into discovering your desires and maybe even empowering them? If so, I'd love to know how you're getting on with the inquiries I invited you into. And the best way to do that is to head on over to the Primal Happiness Facebook group and post there. The link for that, I'm going to try and do a better job than I did just now, is facebook.com/group/primalhappiness. And as ever, I'd also just love to have your feedback, questions, and topic suggestions. And the group is the best place to post those to. And that was where I got this particular topic from. So I do listen and I take action on anything you ask for. And of course, if you'd like to join me live for the next show, you'd be very welcome. If you go along and like our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/primal happiness, you can watch out for the show airing live on the first Friday of every month at 10 a.m. GMT. If you'd like to get notes and links for everything we spoke about this week, hop on over to the show notes, and they're at primalhappiness.co/episode 269. And if you're feeling the call to waking the wild masculine or waking the wild feminine, then go along to primalhappiness.co/WTWF for waking the wild feminine, or primalhappiness.co/WTWM for waking the wild masculine, or I'll go deeper page if that's easier, primalhappiness.co/go deeper to let us know. And just to say, the spaces are intentionally limited to create the most intimate, powerful experience. And that means they get filled up fast. So if you're feeling it's for you, take action now to be sure of your place. And if you don't want to miss out next week's episode, head on over to Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, or your Android or iOS app of choice and hit that subscribe button. That way you'll get each episode delivered straight to your device as soon as it's released. Thank you so much for listening. You've been wonderful. Catch you again next Tuesday.